Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello again. This is Drew Amoroso, and thanks for joining us today for this week's edition of 11 at 11. I appreciate you being here, and congratulations to you for taking some time out of your busy week to work on yourself and on your workday. So today I want to talk about what I think is one of the most unproductive thoughts that each of us is consciously and unconsciously having each and every day. And here's the thought. Why did this happen to me? And I think if you pay close attention to how you're thinking throughout the day, this thought or some variation of this thought pops into our mind all day long in response to what we perceive in the moment to be a negative situation, or in response to something that interferes with the well laid out plans that we had for the day. So I personally catch myself thinking this way all the time. But I want to give you a couple of examples of specific situations that pop up where I think this plays out for many of us. So situation number one is where a potential client says no, or a client or a supervisor or a colleague says that they don't like our work, right? When someone says no to us or that they don't like what we've done, it's easy for us to take that personally and internalize what just happened, right? Particularly if it's a project or something that we worked hard on and we anticipated that it would be received with some sort of praise or acceptance. Situation number two is when we make a mistake. So when we make a mistake, we tend to immediately start to beat up on ourselves and say, how could I have done that? That was such a stupid thing to do. How could that have happened, right? And we question, why didn't we do something differently? And then situation number three is when something interrupts our plans for the day. So when we start the day and think about what we have to do that day, we almost immediately set this baseline expectation in our mind for how things are going to go that day. And then when something unexpected happens during the day that we didn't plan for, we get frustrated and upset that this thing impacted our day. And all of these thoughts originate from a central perspective that we're choosing to look at our workday through, which is the perspective of, why did this happen to me, right? So here's one of the major problems with that viewpoint. When we ask the question that way, why did this happen to me? We get in the habit of looking at life and our work days from a passive perspective, right? It's sort of like a victim's perspective. It makes it feel like the outside world has it in for us. It's conspiring against us. There's something out there that's acting not in our best interests. And what this thinking does is it robs us of our power and our confidence and our ability to move through our day from an active perspective as opposed to a passive one. And our brains act this way because we want to know the reason why things happen to us so that we can protect ourselves, right? So if we come across a situation where it feels like we've encountered something that has the potential to cause us harm, our brain kicks into survival mode and it starts to ask, why, so that it can protect us in the moment and in the future. So really the origin of this thought, why did this happen to me, comes from a place of feeling like we need to protect ourselves. And when we feel like we need to protect ourselves, we automatically look at every situation we encounter with suspicion so that we can do a better job of protecting the next time. So how do we address this? Here's what I would encourage you to do. I want you to flip that thought around. So instead of asking, why did this happen to me? I want you to ask the question, how did this happen for me? And when we ask the question this way, it allows us to move from a place of passiveness to being an active participant in what happens next. So we're essentially flipping from being someone who has things that are happening to them all day to someone who is taking every single thing that happens and using it as a way to move forward. So in other words, we can take the things that we used to think happen to us, and we can realize that we always have a choice to view everything that happens as an opportunity to outgrow the old state of mind that caused us to think that way in the first place, right? And we can enter into a new state of mind that allows us to grow past that negative thinking. So here is the ultimate value of learning how to do this. When you choose to think about things from the perspective of, how did this happen for me? Then you no longer have to subject yourself to the repetitive disappointment and anxiousness and anger or frustration that arises when a particular situation presents itself. So I want to just pause here for a second, and I want you to think about a recurring situation in your day that when it happens, it always puts you in the same scared, anxious, or frustrated state of mind, right? I bet you can probably think of a situation that every time it pops up, you automatically get pulled into being scared or anxious or frustrated. Can you relate? Can you relate to that, Amy? Right? Wouldn't it be great to stop feeling that way every time that happens to you? Right? It happens to you because you're viewing it as something that's happening to you. And what I want you to do is flip that and empower yourself by asking, how is this happening for me? So, for example, when a potential client says no, or someone says they didn't like the work that I did, I don't take it personally. And instead, I step into the role of an active participant and I try to figure out why that is so I can take a better approach next time. Or when I make a mistake, I don't immediately start to beat up on myself, but instead I step into the role of an active participant and I ask what I learned from this. Or when something interrupts my plans for the day, I move away from feeling like something happened to me and I step into the role of being an active participant by taking that new information and using it to reshape and reset my expectations for that day. Right? So being an active participant allows me to quickly shed my old expectations of what I wanted to happen because those expectations no longer apply, and I change my plan using the new information that I have. So to wrap this up, here's what I want you to consider doing for yourself this week. I want you to try to catch yourself one time each day where you're thinking about something from the perspective of, why did this happen to me? Number two, when you catch yourself having that thought, I want you to flip it and ask the question, how did this happen for me? And make a choice to be an active participant in what happens next. So when I do this exercise, I find it helpful to write down then and there one way that I can become an active participant in what happens next. In other words, what steps can I take to move from being passive to active with this particular situation? If you do this over and over again, you start to look at the world and your life and your workday in a completely different way. So if you look at things as happening for you, then there's always a takeaway, right? And instead of bathing in that self-misery and that loathing all day, like things are happening to you, you get to have opportunities all day long that are helping you to move forward. So the answer to the question, how is this happening for me? It might not present itself right away, or it might not be an answer that you like. That happens often. But the answers to this question are the answers that help us the most, because it's called growth. That's where we grow, right? Growth can be hard, but that's what it's all about. So to sum it up, if you want to shift your focus from being passive to active, change the way that you ask that question, and remember that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Okay, that's it for today. I'll take some time for questions if there are any. Okay, seeing no questions, we will leave it there for today. Thank you again for joining. Thank you for making some time today to join. Thanks for helping to spread the word about the series. If you could share with a friend, that would be awesome. Next episode is Monday at the same time. We're going to cover a really interesting universal law that I really like, that we can use to make space for things that we want in our life and in our workday. And it's called nature abhors a vacuum. Really interesting concept. That will be the topic for next week.